on this cup of coffee, we're going to be talking about captive spirits. Now, ghost sightings at jails and prisons, those are fairly common, especially in facilities that may have existed for a long period of time and have housed some very hardcore criminals. People don't usually understand the difference between a jail and a prison, but it has to do with the length of sentence that someone has to serve once they've been found guilty of a crime. The more severe the crime, the more time will be served, and the more crimes someone commits, the more time will be served. When I first started as a corrections officer at a regional jail, inmates with a sentence over 1 year were supposed to be shipped on to prison. But that changed pretty quickly within maybe a year that I had been there, and that was due to overcrowding and probable political reasons, to where the length of stay at the jail was up to 2 years before the inmates would be shipped out. Now, the facility where I worked was relatively new. It was built in 2005, and I worked there from 2007 to 2011. Now, part of our training was to watch for signs that an inmate was becoming suicidal. And while I was an officer, I was blessed in the fact that no one made an attempt on our shift, but months before I was hired, a female inmate had hanged herself. The female officers that were there at the time of the incident were devastated. That's something I don't know that you ever totally get over. One of the officers who was on our shift was also an EMT, and she had performed CPR on the inmate from the time that the cell door was open, and I think that she rode in the ambulance with her all the way to the hospital. Now, I will tell you this. If you'll notice, according to reports, no one ever dies inside a facility. They all conveniently die either as they're being transported or at the hospital. An officer I never met who was on duty at the time of the hanging, and she quit shortly afterwards, and that's understandable. And it was discovered afterwards that I had been issued her jacket, so that was kind of an odd thing. One of the officers that I worked with the most and who became a very close friend to me, she always lamented at the fact that she had been at the academy during the time of the suicide, and she always felt that if she had been there, that maybe somehow she could have prevented it, and it had to be some form of survivor's guilt on that. Now, I worked 12-hour-long night shifts, 2 on, 2 off, rotating weekends, and one of our corporals that I just adored, he used to say he wanted to see some spooky shit. And I assured him that no, he really did not, but he insisted that he did. Now, there were times that there was a dark shadow that could be seen on that was walking across the top tier in B-Pod, and that was the location of the suicide. We saw that more than once, and it was always kind of unnerving to see the shadow and then later to have to do a round in that area. And there was just this sense of, well, sadness and foreboding. And that could have been due to the presence, or it could have been due to the fact that it's like we had seen a shadow and we knew the story of that location. Now, there was another sighting that involved my friend that I was just telling you about. She called me down to Master Control. Now, Master Control was the computer hub of the facility. That's where all of the cameras were. Everything was being recorded. It also, you had the doors were controlled from Master Control. The officers had keys to just certain interior doors, but everything else was operated by Master Control. So you had to stand there and wait until somebody opened the door, and then to make sure that the doors were closed after you. Now, my friend had told me to come down to Master Control and watch video footage that had been taken from men's housing on one of the segregation sliders. And so she rolled the video back, and as I watched, you could see what appeared to be an individual wearing orange and white stripes, and that was medium security clothing, walk past the closed sliding doors. And so we called our lieutenant to come look at the video because all the inmates were supposed to be locked down at that time. And after he saw the footage, he ordered an emergency count to be taken of all inmates, plus a perimeter check, because he was responsible. If somebody was missing, that's kind of a big deal. So everybody was accounted for, and nothing out of the ordinary was found other than the video. And all of us watched it more than once. And I don't think at that point that anybody other than the one female had died inside of the facility. I think that we would have known that. Now, the footage from the cameras were supposed to be stored for a period of time, and it would have been great if we could have had a copy of the phantom inmate sighting, but I'm sure that all of that has been erased by this time, except from the minds of those of us who saw it. So if you have any paranormal, supernatural, UFO, alien, Bigfoot, chupacabras, alternate realities with or without substance usage, any of those things, send them to me at cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. If you need someone to listen to you, that's perfectly fine too. Send me an email. You all have a beautiful, blessed day.